Matthew Stafford, Puka Nacua, and Los Angeles Rams host Jared Goff, Aidan Hutchinson, and the Detroit Lions in a pivotal NFC showdown. This is the game of the week, in my opinion, in the NFL, especially in the NFC. This conference is loaded with talent. You've got a team as good as the Detroit Lions, one of the most talented rosters in the league, and they're currently outside of the playoffs picture. If the postseason began today, they would be sitting out of it, watching those games at home. They are the 8 seed right now, one game behind the Chicago Bears and the San Francisco 49ers. So a lot to be decided the next few weeks. This is going to come down to which defense, I believe, can get the stops in the key moments, because we know these are two of the most high-powered offenses in the NFL. For Detroit, it's about finding a way to come up with a win in this one and just get within a game of the Chicago Bears, where there's a road game at the end of this season. If they could be something like 10-6 and Chicago were to be 11-5, they win that game, they will be in the playoffs. It's going to be that simple come the last week of the regular season. So to get into a position like that, they will need a win on the road at SoFi Stadium. Remember, these two teams have played each of the last 2 years. You go back into the wild card game at Ford Field. Stafford coming back to Ford Field, a loss in that one in a tight game. And then last year, week 1, overtime, Detroit is able to pull that one out as well. And this is going to be one of those games where you just imagine the scoring will be high. The defensive stops, the opportunities will be limited just because of how good these offenses are, and no doubt the quarterbacks. There's an easy argument to make that Matthew Stafford has been one of the best 2 quarterbacks in the NFL, and Jared Goff is clearly one of the best 5 quarterbacks in the league. You look at his statistics over the last couple of seasons, there's really no arguing how good of a producer he has been and taking care of the football. On this season, Jared Goff has thrown 26 touchdowns to just 5 picks. Matthew Stafford has been playing himself fully into the MVP conversation, but a game like this one against a quality opponent will continue to put him into that MVP conversation. And look, the goal for the Rams is to get that first round bye, to get the number 1 seed in the playoffs, and they are facing a key test on the road against the Seahawks on Thursday, 4 games after this one. So this is the Rams season right now. It's going to come down to these 2 games determining their seeding most likely in the playoffs, what happens in the NFC West division. Now, for the starters of this one, you clearly have to compare the offenses, because we can talk about the defenses and the injuries that lay in the secondary for Detroit here in a second, but let's sort of set the table, if you will, this holiday season for what these offenses do produce. This is the number 1 offense in the league in the Detroit Lions. They score 30 points a game. You remember, we talked about it earlier in the year, there are only 2 teams in football the last 2 years that have scored a total of 1,000 points. 500 points a season the last 2 years for Detroit. Baltimore's done the identical thing, and this team has not slowed down in any capacity. Amon-Ra St. Brown, there were question marks against the Dallas Cowboys, whether or not he would play, whether or not the Lions could beat the Cowboys, and if this team would be heading for a lackluster finish to the year. What do? They put up 44 points on the fast track. They are 3rd in the league in yards a game, 379 yards a game. This Rams team that they're playing on the road, look, 29 points a game, that's 4th in the league, 373 yards a game. That is also 4th in the NFL. 2 of the top 5 offenses in the NFL. Now, we talked about the injuries. No doubt, can we make a video without mentioning Brian Branch? So sorry to hear from that a couple of days ago with the injury to him. One of the more talented players in the league, him and Kerby Joseph. Kerby Joseph has missed a bunch of time this year. His availability for this one is pretty key, especially now without Brian Branch in the back end and what he brings to the table in the sense of coverage ability, how you can move him around and play so many different positions up on the line of scrimmage towards the ball, rushing the quarterback, making tackles in open space, covering tight ends, covering slot wide receivers, playing in the middle of the field, deep safety. He's a truly great player out of Alabama. And without his presence, and unfortunately, he's probably going to wind up missing time a bit next year. Achilles are a long table back, wishing him a speedy recovery. Without him in the back end, that is going to be a lack of run support stopping this Rams two-headed monster attack in Blake Corum and Kyren Williams. What excites me about this game is running football. NFC, you always think about these tough teams, cooler conditions. Two of these dome teams don't quite play in the elements all that often, but they play on turf, and it's fast, and it's physical up front with the offensive lines. And Corum Williams, Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs, you're going to have a tough time finding a couple of better running back duos in the National Football League. And for me, that's where it all starts for Detroit. That's where it all starts for Los Angeles, because you come out and start the game, you get 6-7 yards, 2nd and 2, 2nd and 3, 2nd and 4. You're keeping your offense on schedule, staying away from 2nd and long, to where if you're LA against that Lions pass rush, Kadeem Muhammad, Aidan Hutchinson, how talented they are, and bringing guys like Anzalone or Jack Campbell, they've got a lot of talent on that front seven for the Rams. And their defense, verse Byron Young, Fisk, Turner. This is one of the best, if not the best, front sevens in the league in LA. We talked about the numbers for LA statistically as an offense. Well, you look at what they are as a defense, all of the statistics point towards this team in yards a game. They're right up there, a top 10 team, points a game in the top 5. This is a very talented team, and why they are a bona fide Super Bowl contender. When you have a top 5 offense and a top 5 defense, and you've got a quarterback that doesn't have a propensity to turn the ball over, and you take the football away, you're third in the NFL in turnover differential, +9 on the season. Your sacks are top 10. These two teams get after the quarterback really well. Can't help but smile when looking at the quality of matchup. Quarterback, run game, offensive line, defenses. The real sort of hole, though, you can start to pick into now is going to be that middle of the field for this Detroit Lion defense. And this is an area where you look at a speedy player like Tutu Atwell that the Rams have been looking to try and get back healthier for them. That if they were to have a guy in Tutu Atwell on the field, I'd be saying good night for Detroit, because in a player that can stretch the field in that way, it's going to be very tough for them to do that. Now, this is not to say that Nacua, Davante Adams can't stretch the field in the area that's between the numbers or towards the hashes. It's just that they don't have the type of deep speed that a team like Detroit does that can stretch you with Jameson Williams. But don't get me wrong, in my opinion, there's no better duo in the National Football League than Adams and Puka Nacua. What they do, Puka Nacua puts up 167 and 2 touchdowns. Makes a guy like me feel very smart picking him in the first round of my fantasy draft this year. He's been terrific. And then they get towards the red zone. Davante Adams got more touchdowns than anyone in the NFL. Amon-Ra St. Brown not too far behind him. So that's a part of the field where I'm going to attack. I'm going to go right at the slot. And when you have dynamic wide receiver play with Nacua and Adams, guys that can fill in out of the slot, a lot of the pre-snap motion, the misdirection that McVay loves to use and utilize to identify coverage from defenses. This is a really tricky matchup from Detroit, and I would be shocked if they wind up giving up less than 30 points in this game. The way that they played against Dallas and how Prescott was swarmed, he was sacked 5 times for 50 sack yardage. They couldn't run the football all that well, less than 4 yards a carry. He threw 2 interceptions. Still, the Dallas Cowboys found themselves in a 1-score game, just not being able to stop. Give the credit and kudos to Detroit, Dan Campbell calling plays, and the Lions offense. If they give up 30 to Dallas and that offense, just think about this offensive line in LA, a team that can most likely get 2, 3, 4 more stops than what the Cowboys were able to come up with. And you start to see how tall of a task this will be for the Detroit Lions. For me personally, it's about starting fast. You would always like to get out to a lead, but in this type of game, it really is important, because you look at a loss that just sort of sticks out to you, it was the Carolina Panthers recently. They went right down the field and scored a touchdown. What did Carolina do? Well, they responded. They came right back, tied that game up, and it kept it close. Everything the Rams did, they were able to replicate, and then they took advantage, took the lead in the third quarter, and they frankly didn't look back. Or you look at the loss to the San Francisco 49ers earlier in the year on a Thursday night game for LA. It was a game they got down by 14 points. So a path. 2 of those 3 games, you've seen teams playing with them early. The Philly game, they were up by 19 and a lot of the miscues. But to say that the LA Rams have to start really fast in order to beat teams is frankly not true. But if you're going to beat them, it certainly helps give you a chance to beat them if you can keep them out of just this balanced attack, Stafford under center. If you could get them down by 7-10 points in the fourth quarter where they're going to have to throw it a little bit more, drop that passing attack, you have a chance. If you can't get them there, it's really difficult to have a shot against this team because of how effectively they can run the ball. What they did against the Arizona Cardinals should be outlawed. 250 yards, 7 yards a carry against Arizona, and put up 45 points. It felt like they could have scored 70 if they wanted to. Matthew Stafford was having a field day. So for Detroit, how do I think they come out the gates and sort of pivoting towards Detroit and their offense against the LA Rams? I'm testing that secondary. Look, Amon-Ra St. Brown and Williams, I mentioned the best receiver duo in the NFL in Adams and Nacua probably right now. There's an argument for Williams and St. Brown right now. I talk about them all the time being a top 3-4 duo in the league. This is the type of game where you're like, okay, Amon-Ra wasn't quite fully healthy. He still plays really well. He is a major factor, 90 yards on 6 catches against Dallas with that ankle. He looked good on warm-ups, comes out, he's a major factor. Now, you'd imagine he's going to have the capabilities to cook, to play very well out of the slot against this LA secondary. And frankly, if you were to think about a weakness, Quentin Lake is one of the better defensive backs. He's a great player for LA. If they could have him, Darius Williams, the corner, he didn't play against the Arizona Cardinals. That was a miss for them. So a couple of those guys in the secondary and not having them, that does start to even out this matchup. Frankly, straight up, in this environment, if it were played in Detroit, I'd probably say it feels like an overtime game. Feels like maybe a game Detroit could pull out by a point if they had the health. But in LA at SoFi Stadium, feels like a game where the Los Angeles Rams are going to have an advantage to really go after that Lions secondary. But Detroit, in this offense, they will need to run the football. Because if you are in 3rd and long with that pass rush and Verson Young flying off the edge, it's going to spell a recipe for disaster. The Rams have 36 sacks on the season. There may not be a better defensive player in the NFC West or for LA. One of the better defensive players in the entire league right now in Jared Verse. Off-ball backers, not many are playing at a higher level than Nate Landman. That snag against Arizona, 2 hands right in there. It's as good as it gets, and that's a high-quality play. How often you see backers drop far easier opportunities than that one. So keeping Goff under center, positive plays, staying away from the negatives, getting into penalties and those types of statistics is where it would kill Detroit. They had 8 penalties for 50 yards. That's too many. You can't have that many penalties against a well-coached LA team. A squad where, really frankly, to have a chance, you're going to need a takeaway or 2. Stafford, they're in that tight of a game with Carolina, a chance to tie it. He turns the football over 3 times, 2 interceptions and a fumble, and still LA has a chance to win. His by far worst game of the season, and LA is still right there against a team in Carolina. Remember, Carolina beat the Green Bay Packers at Lambeau Field. The team I bet Lions fans are upset I'm bringing up, but it's the fact of it. They beat the Packers at Lambeau. Packers beat Detroit twice. and outplayed them thoroughly in both of those games. I know Detroit had a chance in that second one, but Jordan Love and playing well. So that was a good Carolina football team. They're right there with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the NFC South. They very well could be hosting somebody in that 4 seed for the playoffs. So that's by no means a bad loss for the Rams overall. And like, man, like, how do we lose to Carolina? It's more like, man, we kicked ourselves in the foot there, shot ourselves in the foot. We gave up the 1 seed overall in the conference. At the time, the Chicago Bears, of all teams, were able to come up with it, and we shortened the gap. We had a 1-game lead over Seattle, a 1-game lead over the Philadelphia Eagles, and that gets shortened because of that loss. You lost your margin for error and your cushion. Now, the Rams, obviously, they control their destiny to go get the number 1 seed in the NFC in that first round bye, but they had a position of cushion, and now that that cushion is fully erased. I think what's fascinating about this matchup is how much I've talked about the injuries in the secondary, but a guy like Sam LaPorta and his impact as a run blocker, as a threat. There are times when you've got talented secondaries out there that can take away Amon-Ra over the middle of the field, or Jameson Williams, right? Still developing as a route runner at the next level and trying to add more routes to his receiving tree. Third target on this offense being Sam LaPorta. So now what you've seen a little bit more is Jahmyr Gibbs and him evolve into a wide receiver threat, and how Gibbs is lining up out wide and they're using him in motion. He's running true routes and he's gotten freaking good at it. He's one of the better receiving backs in the league, a guy with that type of speed, that change of direction, and now you add in the route running savvy that he's starting to come up with. That's very dangerous, because there are not many players on the planet that have that type of breakaway speed. And then you add in the ability to stop on the dime, to have a lot more control of your body, getting in and out of breaks, back to the football, being a hands catcher as well. You just frankly don't have that type of elements quite often. A guy in Nate Landman, as good as he is, that's a clear mismatch if you have Landman on Gibbs. David Montgomery, now you've got quite the battle, but Gibbs, you have to be covering him if he's slotted out wide with a defensive back, whether it be in a nickel or a dime package, and having somebody lined up on him. Out of the backfield, sure, he's going to be in situations where there's a backer covering him. That's often why, if the Lions are in 3rd or 4th and short, they're so dangerous because of the quick speed out, right, where they get Gibbs right out to the flat. More often than not, that's going to be a linebacker that has that responsibility. They're keyed into the run, and they're going to be just a beat late. If you're a beat late with Jahmyr Gibbs, it's not just a first down, but half the time it's going to be a touchdown with his breakaway speed. If you were looking at Gibbs, and there's that conversation, do I take Gibbs? Do I take Saquon Barkley? Do I go with Bijan Robinson, the top 3 players in the draft? Jonathan Taylor's turned into a good one. Christian McCaffrey, but then Jahmyr Gibbs is right there. And going forward the next couple of years, I don't know if there's a running back that I'd rather have in the NFL in Jahmyr Gibbs. But again, this Detroit Lion offensive line has not been healthy. They haven't had this entire unit, and it was spoken about early, like week 1. Romo, Nance were talking about the O-line and Ratledge in there, and no Frank Ragnow, him retiring, and he won't be available. He wasn't able to pass that physical, so that was a big bummer for Lion fans, because he will not be returning. You hoped you could get an all-pro, a great level player in Ragnow back, and then that's not happening. So this offensive line has not been a full strength, which has been one of the best units. Easily a top 5 unit the last 3-4 years for Detroit, and for them not to be, they lost a guy in Christian Mahogany, and they lose an amount of depth, but they've lost a couple of other offensive linemen. It's very difficult, especially in this game. A lot of injuries for the Lions, puts a lot on their plate stacked up against LA. So my initial thoughts on this one are the Rams, just because of simply they've been pretty healthy. You stack up these rosters, and who's the healthier team currently? Well, it'll be Los Angeles, and the way that they're playing and how when they're on schedule, there's no better team in football than when Matthew Stafford is in rhythm, and they can go down and score 7 points, and they can get a stop, and then score 3, and then get another stop, and then put up 7. They can put those bunches together as well as anybody because of that top end, top 5 offense, top 5 defense. There's no other team in the league that statistically can put up and compete with their production on both sides of the football. You've got very good teams in New England. They're up there top 10. Are they a top 5 offense? They've got a Drake May that's been great this year, but Detroit fans would probably take their offense. Rams fans would probably take their offense or even their quarterbacks at this stage. You're looking at a Rams team in this one at home that I feel good about. Most likely right now, the first number that comes out to me is about 6 to 7 points and what they can win this one by. That's where I start to get aggressive in my thought process. If I'm Kelvin Shepard, I'm Dan Campbell, and looking at LA and seeing how that Carolina Panther defense played. Well, you got a strip sack fumble. There's an interception that Stafford threw on the left side where it's just an underneath route where he thinks he's got a guy breaking back to the ball and it's just intercepted. I'm playing really tight. I'm not giving a lot of space to these wide receivers. I'm challenging them at the line of scrimmage. I'm putting pressure in Stafford's face throughout the day. I'm forcing him to beat me down the field. I'm really taking away that run game. I'm not going to be sitting back in 2 high safeties because we don't have our 2 high safeties. If you don't have your best 2 players in the back end, you're not able to play the type of style of defense that you'd like to. And unfortunately, that's what the reality is now for the Lions. You can't play a type of defense that the Green Bay Packers do in that back end. They get after with their front 4. They can stack only 6, 7 guys in that box and be really good at stopping the run, even when they have a too high shell back there. For Detroit, my opinion, you're going to have to play a bit of cover 1 deep, a bit of cover 3, forcing Stafford to put the ball in the seams of this defense, forcing the ball over the middle of the field. The one-on-ones on the outside, Nacua, Davante Adams, I'm essentially saying, look, I don't want you guys to maintain time of possession and just drive the length of the field. If you're going to beat us on explosives, do it, or we're going to have faith, or we're going to bend but not break and hold you in the red zone. But if you're eating up clock and moving the football and keeping our offense on the sideline, that's a recipe for disaster because we're on the road in Detroit. We're in the Detroit team playing at SoFi, and if they're eating up clock and they're balanced, look, I'd probably rather give up an explosive 1-play touchdown, get my offense immediately out there on the field, than have LA go the length, go 75 yards in 11 plays, 6.5 minutes. That's my opinion. In order for the Lions to get those takeaways that will be critical, you're probably looking at 2 takeaways is what it'll take for Detroit to win this game and flip it. That's what the San Francisco 49ers were able to do. That's the number that they hit. Fumble earlier in that game, down 14-0, LA fumble, chance to make it a tighter margin earlier. The fumble at the goal line. There's the turnover on downs, 4th and 1 in overtime. So that's really 3 key plays. Against the Eagles, 2 blocked field goals. Against the Panthers, 3 turnovers. So in these losses, LA clearly has had a different caliber of play. There's something that you can specifically point out towards what and why they lost those games. Outside of that, the real only tight games, right? The game against the Colts, the A.D. Mitchell drop play by the goal line, and then the Seattle Seahawks game, those are really the only close games that you played and beat somebody. Seattle comes down to a 60-yard kick. They turn it over a bunch, and you were struggling on short down and distance. That game and the Colts game, those are the only two tight wins that the Rams have. Every other win LA has had on the season has been, Texans week 1. That game felt like it was fully in their control. I know it kind of came down there to the wire. That was because of a fumble. You might be able to slide that one in there. But they're a complete team. They've got 5-6 complete wins. And you stack it up, you go team by team across the league. There's not many teams that have as many complete wins. But what I mean by that is all 3 phases clicking well: offense, defense, special teams. No weaknesses. Start to finish, you play a game, a full 60 minutes of clean football, something that Detroit will no doubt be looking to do. You can't quite call it a complete win against Dallas. That's too many points to surrender. Again, that's a top 5 offense in the Cowboys, so not a lot of shame in that. But if you were to go back to look at their last full complete performance, it'd probably be against the Washington Commanders without Jaden Daniels a bit over a month ago, beating them 44-22 the week after your loss at home to the Minnesota Vikings. So Detroit, the narrative, how do you respond? How do you answer? What's the true nature of this Lions team? I think that there's a lot of meat left on the bone for Detroit. This team has been written off that they just don't have it this year. They just aren't a Super Bowl contender, that they just don't have what it takes, that they have to win their division to be able to compete in the playoffs. You can't put this team on the road because the writing's on the wall. If you put Jared Goff in the elements out of Philadelphia, out of Lambeau, out of Chicago, and you have to put him back-to-back weeks in cold weather on the road, he's just not going to be able to create it. You can't fully argue with it when you look at games that he's played, and really the only cold weather environment that he's played in was, I guess, you'd probably look at, it wasn't quite cold, but the Philly game, I guess, 40s, night game, Sunday night, tight one, defense playing really well. That's probably what you would look at, somewhere in the high 40s. Is it cold? Sure. That's probably the one game that would be an indicator of that. I do buy that. I understand how important home field advantage is, especially for a team that plays indoors, especially how good. I think that there's no better team in the league playing in their home building than the Lions, the differential. I think that them on the road against LA, they lose by 7. If this game were in Detroit, we're probably talking about a 1-point game. I think it's about a 6-point, 7-point differential in what their home stadium will be worth. And in the playoffs, that's what a lot of people say, and I agree with that. So my question is a team like Detroit going to prove somebody like me wrong? Prove a lot of you out there wrong in the sense that you might not think Detroit's a Super Bowl caliber team, and then they can go make a run in the postseason. Where it stands right now, them 8-5, the Green Bay Packers now at 9. What are they? They're 9-3-1. They're about a game and a half ahead of you. It's not fully done, right? Green Bay's on the road at Denver. That's not, you were to come out the win against the Rams. Now you're only a half game back. And then the Packers go to Chicago. The Packers are going to be playing the Baltimore Ravens. They got a couple of tough matchups. The Bears, well, they're going to be playing Green Bay. They're going to be playing at San Francisco. And then you have them. So this isn't fully wrapped up. This really decides. If you were to lose to the Rams, that'll be that for the Lions' NFC North chances, and frankly, in my opinion, their ability to win multiple games in the playoffs or get into the Super Bowl. I believe truly that with Goff and this type of quarterback and this type of style of team that's far better at home, they need that style of an advantage. I think they could get a win in the playoffs in environments once on the road, but I don't think they could do it twice. Now, the support of that would simply just be the weather and the style of play and just not being quite as efficient, and there being some pretty dang good competition out there that you'd have to face. Now, this game against LA, I think that the Rams, as I mentioned, are going to get a win here. 34-27 feels about right. It's hard to imagine either of these teams score less than 3 touchdowns. I was contemplating putting it like 37, 31, 30-ish. That's a lot of points. And this Rams defense is as good as they get. They're going to be even better next year. They're more than likely, with the poor play of Atlanta, they're going to find themselves at the top 10 pick. Their own first rounder, they're going to be able to do whatever what they want. Could they get a Caleb Downs type guy in the first round for you Big Ten or Detroit Lion fans? Maybe your Michigan Wolverine fans, you probably know the name Caleb Downs. He could be playing for the Los Angeles Rams next year. The Rams could try and go get themselves a quarterback, trade up and get a quarterback to succeed Matthew Stafford. This team is in good a shape as anyone you can really remember, having 2 first-round picks, one of them that could be the top 10, and they might even get to the Super Bowl or win the Super Bowl this year. So the 7-point win at home, the confidence, a lot of that stemming from their quarterback play, veteran ability, and the Lions' injuries. You pair that with the back seven and how it's been inconsistent through week to week, being very good. And what I mean by that is the way that they looked against Philadelphia, quite good. Like, my goodness, they looked great. Against the Minnesota Vikings a couple of weeks, I guess a bit of over a month ago, not that great. Against the Giants at times. What is happening? Why is Jameis Winston torching us right now? Against the Green Bay Packers, why are they just marching across the field? They gave up 30 to the Cowboys, 370 passing yards. They gave up 31 to the Green Bay Packers, gave up 27 to the New York Giants. So if you're going to sit here and tell me this Detroit Lion defense is a lot better than the way they've played just because they held the Philadelphia Eagles to 9 points, or to 16 points, that Philly team has been good. Sure, they're one of the more dangerous teams. They get into the postseason if they're playing well, but you look at the trend and how it's been the last couple of weeks, not all of the most positive signs for that Detroit Lion defense. It would take a massive effort. I think that the crucial number here is they got to hold LA to less than 30. They can hold the Rams to less than 30 points. Truly believe they have a shot. They'll have a chance to win it. It could be tight. This high-powered attack from Detroit is good enough to score consistently. That's my number. If the Rams score more than 30, as good as their defense is, they're going to beat anybody. But for the Rams, it's 4 touchdowns. If you score 4 touchdowns, you're going to win the game. No matter who you're playing, you're confident enough. If it's Philly, again, they beat you 3 in a row, but you play them a 4th time, you'll beat them. If it's the Packers, if it's the Bears, if it's the Seahawks, the Broncos, whatever team you throw out there, LA, 4 touchdowns, and they're going to win the game with this offense and the way that their defense plays. So I want to hear from all of you guys. Let me know down below in the comments who you think wins this game. Do you agree with me? Do you think that Detroit has an opportunity to prove that they can be a Super Bowl contender? If they beat the Rams at the Rams, they are the Super Bowl contender. There's no doubt about it anymore. They would be 9-5. 9-5 is a great record no matter any way that you slice it. And they'd be right there in this division, still competing towards the end, giving themselves most likely a shot to be maybe in a win and in at the end of the regular season. If they lose, definitely not a Super Bowl contender, and all more likely than not, they will not be making the playoffs. So pivotal game, huge stakes on this one. Unfortunately for Detroit, like that number right now is down to 4. If there's a combination of a situation where they lose 2 games and the Bears win 2 games, they're eliminated. Same thing with San Francisco. If San Francisco wins 3 games and the Lions just lose 1, San Francisco is in over Detroit. So that number, that elimination number, currently sits at 4. There's 8 potential slots left here. A tough one, right, with the Bears. If that number is 4, if they beat a team like Cleveland, it goes down to 3. If you were to lose to the Rams, it would go down to 2. So that number would be 2 going into the last 3 weeks of the regular season. And you're still facing teams like the Pittsburgh Steelers there on the schedule. So a must-win, no doubt, for Detroit against who I think is the best team in the NFL. Let's see what happens. Let me know down below who you think wins this game and why, what the final score will be. Appreciate all of you so much for watching this Blitz with Blender video. My name is Josh Blender, making NFL and college content weekly, getting you set and ready for these incredible matchups. I'm so fired up for this one. Great teams in the NFL. They've played the last couple of years in great games and great matchups. And I don't really see a reason why this one will be much different. We're probably going to see a great one. And it's going to come down to it, 34-27. Got the Rams with the win. If you have not already, please subscribe for more content in the future. Got the college football playoff fully set now. Those games coming out December 19th and then 20th. There'll be 3. The NFL playoffs starting in January. All of that, you won't want to miss it. Thank you so much. I'll see all of you next time.
Best player in college football.
That Georgia and Ohio State game, New Year's Eve, is going to be a classic.
Josh Blender, hi everybody, I'm Josh Blender. To the 40, 35, 30, Espinosa to the 20.